Does your organization have a safe to fail culture? If you answer yes, are you really sure? Or is it that something that lives in the values deck gets mentioned in the all hands and quietly disappears the moment someone actually fails and needs the organization to mean it? Because here's the uncomfortable truth: most companies perform psychological safety, they don't practice it. And the gap between those two things is where teams quietly fall apart, where new hires lose trust before they have found their footing, where unclear expectations create invisible failure traps, and where the mistakes that ruin teams never get named out loud because the culture has made it too costly to do so. My guest today has spent 16 years inside the gap. Megan Petrini is a certified professional in talent development, a trust at work practitioner, and the author of Manage to Fail, which I highly recommend, a brutally honest field guide to the mistakes that ruin team trust and training. She has spent years at Zappos, one of the boldest cultural experiments in corporate history. If you do culture, you have heard all the stories possible about Zappos. They
That's
are really good at putting the finger in what matters. And there is a couple of things to learn. And she has seen up close the difference between a culture that genuinely treats failure as data and one that just say it does. Today, we are going to name what most organizations refuse to. Safe to fail is a lie. And here is what it would actually take to make it true. Megan, welcome to the Growth Hacking Culture podcast. A pleasure.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Listen, I have so many questions because your book, Manage to Fail, is really provocative. The title, I love it, by the way. It talks
Thank
to me.
you.
I
I
love
had
when
help
it's,
with it, but thank you. Yes.
yeah, but it's in your face. Manage to Fail. Most leadership books promise a formula for success. Yours leads with failure.
Yes.
What made you decide that the most honest and useful thing you could give people was a field guide to what goes wrong?
Yes. I'm so happy you asked that. And I love this question. So, in every job I've ever had, I usually end up being the trainer. And what I learned really quickly was stories stick with people a lot faster than instructions.
Mm.
Right? So they remember the stories and they remember vulnerability. So if I shared my mistakes very early on, like at a restaurant, for example, hey, make sure when someone sits down, when you go to greet them, bring the bread. Don't make them wait for the bread. Because if you bring bread and drinks, here's water and bread right away, that buys you like 10, 15 minutes so that you can go get other things done. So, and when we're training people, so stories stick a lot faster. And I also learned that a lot of people want to know the why behind, but a lot of people also want to know the why not
Mm.
behind. So it's not enough to say this is really important and here's why we're going to do it. But I'm always in the back at those all hand meetings saying, "Right, but like what happens if we don't do it? Like what's the danger in not accepting this risk, in not accepting this challenge?" Because a lot of times leaders, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, will get up and say, "Here's this really exciting, amazing change and you're going to love it and it's going to be so valuable," and you think, but I don't understand what's wrong with what we're doing right now. Tell
Mm.
me, tell me the mistake that we're in right now so that I can help us correct it. So I like to share my mistakes because people remember those lessons usually a lot faster and because they want to know the why, but they also want to know why not.
Megan, you have used the word trainer. I'm taken as a trainer. You know, behind the word trainer, there is a lot of baggage. It's like if you're a trainer, you are supposed to pass on knowledge.
Yes.
But learning how to fail is not knowledge. It's like it doesn't even matter how much definitions, stories, stories stay with people. That's correct. But it's not enough to pass on just transfer knowledge. Somehow they need to practice. One, what would you call yourself if you don't call yourself a trainer? Two, is there a good way to learn how to fail?
If I wasn't a trainer, if I didn't call myself a trainer,
Yeah.
I would probably call myself an instructional designer, which I know is under the same field, but I think maybe a learning experience designer,
Hmm.
because I think that that better portrays what it is that I'm trying to do in whatever, if I'm facilitating, if I'm in front of a group of people, if I'm building an e-learning, if I'm writing a book, what I'm trying to do is design a learning experience where people are walking away with, here's how I can actually move something forward. Here's something that I can avoid. I can learn from Megan's mistakes so that I have a better starting point than
Hmm.
other people. So I think that's probably what I would call myself. And what was the second question? One more time.
The second question is about how do you train people? How do you make them practice? Because it's not about knowledge transfer. It's not
Right.
because I tell you that somebody will get interested and will want to try something else.
So how do we make them actually practice it?
Yeah.
So, like, do you know the 70-20-10 rule where like 70% of what you learn is actually on the job? So, regardless of what we say in class, when they hit the floor and they sit next to somebody at their job, that's where most of their actual like skills are coming into play. So, for us on my side, our responsibility is to push the information, right? All of talent development primarily is knowledge, skills, or attitude. We call it KSAs,
Mhm.
knowledge, skills, and attitude. And we need to have that in every single learning experience. And that's not just in the classroom or in the e-learning module or whatever it may be. So we blend adult learning, right, which is different than how kids learn, right?
Mm.
A lot of times we have people get up in front of other people and they start talking like they're an elementary school teacher. Don't do that. They don't Adults don't like that, right? So different things to keep in mind. So we introduce the knowledge, we introduce the concept. We have case studies, we have team building, we have groups where they get together and actually work through some of the real life problems that the company is experiencing. And I do this with leaders and employees, the same individual contributors and managers. And then you have an action plan and you partner with the managers on the team. So you teach the information, you share the information, you give them time, a safe place to practice in class. Really important that we create a safe environment in class where it's okay to fail, where it's okay to ask questions. Many times, even how, whenever you're in front of a group of people, even how you respond to questions, what your face looks like, what your body language looks like, is going to send a message to those people. This is someone that I can talk to, or I shouldn't be asking a question. So, whenever I'm training a new trainer, there's many things I keep in mind where it's like don't stand behind something. Don't separate yourself from the group. Stand with the group, right? Make eye contact with people. Repeat the information. Ask if they have questions. When someone has a question, say, "That's a great question." And then restate that to the entire group, because what you're doing is you're actually training them that it's okay to be safe here. It's okay to say you don't know. When you don't know, it's important to say, "I don't know, but I can follow up with you." So all those, when we get out of class and go onto the floor, it's important that the designers partner with the managers and say, "Hey, I have extra material that I need them to understand that this is, if you present them with this worksheet or you check in with them, you let me send them a couple of micro learnings over the next couple of weeks, we're going to
Mhm.
reinforce this information and it's going to stick a lot better."
Mm.
So it's a huge program. There's never a one and done. It's always a constant check-in, constant iteration.
I love that. One of the things that stay with me is the fact that you have to practice because without the practice, as you say, in fact, this 70-20-10 exists for 10 million years, but
Right.
not many organizations apply it. Human resources people knows about it, but they pay someone to speak for 8 hours and leave, right?
And there's no follow-up. There's no feed. I once got in an argument with my boss at an organization. It wasn't Zappos, who was the president. And I got so heated, but we were screaming at each other because I could not convince her that feedback was important. And I would
Hmm.
say, "Well, what feedback mechanisms do we have for this class?" I came in as external manager hire. "Oh, where's the feedback data?" "Oh, we don't collect feedback." And I said, "Well, how do you know that the training is going well?" This is what she said, "You're gonna love this." She said, "Well, the trainers tell me it went well." And I go, "Oh, no,
Mm,
no, that's not good data. No, ma'am." And she was like, "What do you mean?" I go, "What do the learners think?" And she's like, "Well, they don't know." And I was like, "No." So we got in a big fight about that, and I was so frustrated because I didn't understand how you could say, "I'm a trainer, I'm an instructional designer, I want people to learn," but not actually check to make sure that it's working. That felt so wild to me.
yeah. So basically, what we are saying is that still we are 2026. It makes such a long time that there is very little evolution of the training world, the learning and development world, because still there is a huge chunk of companies who believes that it is about somebody to entertain people for a couple of
Mhm.
hours to pass on knowledge and then magic will happen. But
Right,
there is not this area for practice to have feedback in a safe environment, as you said, and there will not be any systems that will change. So, for instance, the manager will not be aware about what they have learned, and there is no way that he can support the sustainability of or the practice of in real behaviors in reality, not mentally. I do
right.
believe that no, it's not enough that they believe. It's about actions, and that is still not happening enough.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And when you find an organization where they're really excited to promote a learning culture, and then you say, okay, well, here's all the actual steps that we'll need to take. Sometimes it's possible and sometimes it's not. But explaining it and say, this is really important if you want this KSA, it's not just knowledge, it's not just skills, it's not just attitude, it's all three that we have to keep in mind all the time, right? So we can kind of bookend it with like, here's the learning objectives. What is it that you want them? Knowledge, skills, and attitude. And then at the end of that, what's the feedback that's going to measure those learning objectives? And that's where you're going to get the good data, right?
Is there organizations where they say, no, we are going to teach the traditional learning and development, and everything is going to be by the example? And I'm thinking behind this because I read the books about Zappos and all the stuff, and the inspirational image of their CEO. And I thought that do they need learning because what they are doing is that by they are giving a little bit like some guidelines where people has a little bit of accountability. I remember that story about I give you some money to decide how you are going to spend it with the customers.
Hmm.
That story that is more powerful than any sales training ever because you have the accountability to get him happy so that he comes back to you.
And it was a big responsibility. So I was the director of onboarding. So I taught that mindset for many, many, many years.
Yeah,
The biggest challenge was cleaning up and helping people put down the baggage that they had from former call centers. So
yeah,
that kind of mindset is unusual in a call center, right? And I'd never worked at a call center before I worked at Zappos. And I started on the phones there. And then I went through most of the different departments. I did escalations and, quality checks and email live chat, all that. And then I moved into training. So it was fun because when I was teaching it, I would say, listen, I come from the phones. I did the same job that you're going into. And it's difficult, but it's not, there's a lot of training as far as mindset. There's a lot of training as far as practice and saying, I promise you're really not going to get in trouble. Like how I would frame it is I would say, you're never going to get in trouble for working to make a customer happy. You will get in trouble if the customer leaves unhappy and you could have fixed it. That's even that, the why, but also the why not. Why? Because you're empowered to make the right decision because we trust you to make the customers happy. Why not? You will get in trouble. Like you will not pass your quality check if you could have done something and you didn't. So even then, and it was like, they just felt so weird about it, right? Because they'd been micromanaged to death in previous positions.
that's a little bit something that is the most difficult. And as a personal story, I can tell you that I have been an employee for a long time, 18 years in a big American company, traveling around the world and all that stuff. And suddenly, when you become your own boss, then there is to get rid of things that you have continuously have done as an
Mhm.
employee
The muscle memory is so strong.
to break a habit is so difficult. My God. And a mindset, I don't have to care about, I need perfection. Who cares about perfection when you're working on your own? Go
Yeah,
get it. You will get
just do
feedback
your
and
best.
fail a little bit, get some slaps, and you will learn better.
That's right. Even when I launched like my website and I launched like my Instagram, like my professional on your own Instagram, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, like the first 10 videos, I was like, those are so cringy. They're so horrible. I'll never take them down. I'd rather show a progression of like, look, I learned how to do this, but I started really, really poorly. Same thing with my website. It was so horrible, but it's a little bit better now. It's still bad. I'm sure it's bad, but eventually it will move to a good place. You just keep iterating. I love that you called out perfection. I think that the most difficult personality for me to work with is someone who says that they're a perfectionist because I'm action biased, but what it signals to me, especially from a leader, is oh, nothing's going to move forward. Oh my gosh, anything I submit to you is going to sit there forever and you're going to nitpick it to death. And this icon is not the right icon, and this color is not the right color, and it's never about the content. It's never about like what we're actually trying to teach. It always ends up being stuck on the slide is not the right color, or should this slide go to this other place in the deck? And you're like, oh my God, we're going to die before this thing ever launches, and it slows everything down. So one of the biggest things that I'm a proponent of whenever I'm on a new team. It's like, remember that there's no such thing as perfection. Remember that feedback is always going to make it better. Remember that training is never done. It's never finished. There's never a class that's done. It's always iterating. Anything I send to you can be changed. That's one of the biggest training exercises I undertake in any organization is teaching the leadership. I can fix it. If I send you something that you don't like, we can fix it. It's not the end of the world. I promise you it's not the end of the world. So many of them don't know what they want. They'll say, I want a training on LLCs, for example. And you're like, great. And I could say, you send me a script and your learning objectives, and I'll get it built. And guess what? I never get anything because they don't know what they want. But if I build something very scrappy, very like storyboardy, and they're so much faster at providing feedback than they are at providing ideas. And that's where I end up training them like, oh, remember how we did last time? What do you think? Do you want the same objectives this time? And then you kind of, so it's, whenever you're in that position, it's not just building training for the organization. You're also training the organization and you're training the executives on like, here's how we look at like assessments. Here's things that we should be looking at, right? It's always this multi-pronged approach.
There is still many companies who claim that we are safe to fail, we
Oh,
have that culture, it's okay. Is there a way to know how that a company genuinely means it versus is just pure marketing?
I
How
think
can you
there is.
validate that?
Yes, I think there is. So it's difficult, I think, because a lot of organizations really want that. And it's not like it's a lie. They're not purposefully trying to like deceive you, right? They really do want a safe organization.
Mm.
I think where I see a lot of failure is they'll say that and then they don't teach what behaviors on a low trust team look like. They don't teach their managers what behaviors on a high trust team look like. They'll say, we want teams that risk and innovate and try new things, but they don't have budget and they don't have resources and they're understaffed and they're given 50 projects, right? And their priorities are always changing. You're not giving them enough time to try and fail anything. They're also not teaching their managers how to have those conversations, and they're not investing in training for the managers to be able to demonstrate those things. So even if even for managers in a meeting, right? If someone says, I did this, if the manager considers himself a perfectionist, going back to that, and they have those standards for the team, they're going to spend so much time worrying about typos and grammar and this kind of thing that they don't have time to be creative. So it's stifling, right? So I think even if it's not perfect, which it's never going to be, right? But any organization that takes the time to invest in manager training is miles ahead of organizations that say they want that, but don't actually put their money where their mouth is.
I have been reflecting quite a lot about my previous life. And I think that while I was in the corporate, I was a perfectionist because of the fear of this
Mm-hmm.
judgment. Because there will
Yes.
always be someone who tell you this is not the right blue of the company.
Yes. And you're like, who cares about the blue? Did I write is the copy correct? Is this going to send the message we want? And I know that colors are important. I don't mean to offend anybody who's in marketing. And graphic design, those are very important things. But when it's over and over and over, it gets to be a point where you're like, I actually don't feel like I can try anything new because I don't want
Mm.
to get in trouble for it.
I think it is in your book that you talk about the training and onboarding habits that quietly damage employee trust. According to you, what is the most common ones, the thing you see over and over across industry that leaders don't even realize that they are doing?
I think the one I'm always going to lean into, but I'm not going to talk about right now is feedback. I think not doing feedback well is probably the biggest issue. But the thing that I see over and over where they don't realize they're damaging trust is moving meetings and not being available to their team.
Mm.
So if they're so busy that I don't see you all day, you don't check in with me, I send you a good morning message and I don't hear back from you for hours and hours. We have one-on-one scheduled. You're late. You're constantly moving them because somebody else has higher priority. And that's difficult. It's difficult for that position because they're constantly being pulled in a lot of different places. But if they can't hold their boundaries with their employees as far as like their higher ups and saying like
Mm.
I actually can't meet. I have a meeting with my team member right now and that is very very important, right? The more you move those meetings, the later like the more often you're late to those meetings, the more often you have to leave early to those meetings, the more often you show up and you're not prepared, you're damaging trust. And it happens all the time. And managers think I can lean into their goodwill and their trust and they know me and they know that I mean well, but that can only happen for so long before
Mm.
they're not going to come to you when they need you anymore. And it's hard to get that back. It's not impossible, but it's difficult.
Exactly. It breaks the trust with humans. And that shows also a little bit the importance of culture because if you believe that the meeting up there is more important than the meeting down there, I think that says something about the culture of the company, that
I
this
do too.
type of behaviors is rewarded.
That's right. That's right. And not to harp on feedback too much, but when we don't provide feedback on behaviors that we don't agree with, we're actually giving permission. So, to your point, you're being rewarded for this behavior. You're being told over and over and over by your supervisors that it's okay. But everyone that reports to you is getting a different message.
There is another point that you mentioned in your book is about unclear expectations as one of the core failure points.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah.
well, in large organizations, clarity is often the first casualty of complexity, matrix structures, and competing priorities. How do you create genuine clarity in an environment that is structurally designed to produce ambiguity? Because
Always. Why is it so vague? Why can't you say what it is? I think there's a couple of ways that we can do that. So, one is I always like to say, just cut the crap, kids. Okay, when stop using acronyms, stop using buzzwords. Say clearly what the issue is. Say clearly what's going on. Explain the why behind. Also explain the why not behind. I used to mentor a trainer who loved to use college level words, college level vocabulary in
mm,
all of the trainings that he produced. And because he went to college, he was really proud of it. And those are wonderful things. Those are wonderful things. But when he taught classes, some of the biggest feedback was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what that means. I don't understand the definition of this. Just this jumping into these huge words. And we're actually, like, if you go through the APTD and the CPTD training, we're taught to teach at an eighth grade level because you want to cast the widest net possible so that most of the people understand what you're saying. You need to speak in a plain language. I also
mm,
had a CFO one time who refused to change language like using all these really big financial terms. And he said, if they're smart enough, they'll figure it out. And you're like, what? What is wrong with you? Right? Do you want people to understand how the company is performing or not? Because no one cares. If I don't understand, I don't care. I can't plug into this. I can't be invested. I can't support you. I can't explain it to anyone else because I don't know the words that you're using. So and it's difficult, right? Because in their board meetings, that's the language they're using, but you're going to have to translate it. And it doesn't mean that they're not smart. It just means that they don't speak the same language, right? So change the language to the common vernacular of the
Mm,
widest audience. Secondly, I would say what helps me whenever there's a big change or a big priority change or an organization wide change in whatever organization I'm working in, I'll meet with my leader and say, can we review my job description, please? Because I want to make sure that I'm still doing this work. This is what I'm still responsible for. And this is how my performance is being measured. Because sometimes I think for high performers, and at times I've been a high performer, not always, but at times I've been a high performer, we get pulled into other responsibilities.
mm,
And it's a hard thing to balance, I think. So if we've got that good solid foundation with our leaders where we're like, this is my job description, this is what I'm responsible for. Am I doing this? Let's lean into this for my performance review. Then sometimes that can give us a good foundation for kind of when the changes happen, we're like, okay, I know who I am. I know what I'm responsible for. I'm going to help however I can, but these are my priorities. That helps a lot. And that's also difficult to do if you have a manager who's always late and doesn't have time and that kind of stuff. So,
mm.
a lot of different steps that we can take there.
Regarding your point about clarity and using intellectual words, I think it goes beyond just that is understandable for people. It is about making relatable. If I'm talking to someone and I am being relatable, the presence of this person is going to be with me, not
Yes,
thinking
engage.
about what does it mean or a concept is going to be looking at my eyes. Okay, then I got it. Removing any friction is about having the presence of mind because when we hear words after the others that are too complex, we
Mhm.
just get away in our thoughts.
That's right. I don't even know. You're looking it up. I don't even know how to spell it. Right? When they're like, okay, yeah. Yeah. You're like, yeah, you're focused you're distracted essentially.
Mhm.
If you really want people to be engaged, you need to keep them paying attention and they can do that if they understand the words that are coming out of your mouth.
Yes.
Yes.
Zappos, I mean, you know that in Europe, Zappos is not well known. Even now, in the environment of culture, of performance, even in sales, yeah. I remember the first time I heard about Zappos, it was like this example about how the founders created the company to validate that there was going to be a market to sell shoes online. I remember using this example in trainings about innovation because
Yes.
it's about quick validation of if what you are doing makes sense to be sold before you invest millions and millions in
Yes.
websites and so on. So that was amazing. And then after that, with the Tony Xie, I remember that all the stories about the beautiful stories about the culture and also about making people happy, the customer happy. And that included also the employees, by the way.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
there is
we're big customers. Yeah. If you work there, you're a big customer too. Yeah.
there is 10 millions of stories about Zappos, but in reality, we could say that their identity is always around culture. It was the product, not just the environment. What did working there teach you about a genuine learning culture that most organizations are not really doing? Is there something that when you compare, for instance, with the hundreds of clients that you have now compared to that environment that you say, wow, there is a gap here and they are not doing that. But they
Mhm.
were doing that because the CEO was crazy.
Wild about everyone. Tony really wanted everyone to find kind of the corner of what they like doing and what they were good at doing. And he worked hard to try to create those opportunities for people. So the biggest difference that I see, and this is going to be tough for anyone who listens who's in operations, is there's a lot of different departments there at Zappos, right? The biggest one is the call center. The biggest one is always going to be the call center for a lot of organizations, right? And whatever that looks like, sometimes it's sales, sometimes it's not sales, sometimes it's follow up or whatever it may be. Typically sales. And taking customer information. What Zappos did that's different and I haven't seen duplicated since is they would overschedule. So they would overschedule their call center. They would overlap schedules so that they were always like overstaffed by a particular percentage. Let's say, I don't think this is right, but this is the number I remember. I'm not saying don't write this in stone, but they overstaffed at like 60%. So we
Mm.
always had a ridiculous amount of people on the phones so that one, they're not getting burnout. It's not back-to-back phone calls and you're responsible for all of them. It's spread, distributed evenly. But secondly, so that they had time off of the phones during the day so they could attend trainings, they could go to different cultural events. So they overstaffed on purpose, which is a very expensive decision to make because it's all full time. So you're looking at benefits, you're looking at, right, everything, subsidized meals, all the snacks, all the drinks for free, all that kind of stuff. And you're overstaffing deliberately. Let's say it's even at 30%. That's a ton of money, right? But when you have that kind of freedom, then you have more time available. So what they did is they actually paid for more time. They
Huh.
paid for more time. So employee, instead of we don't have time, you can't get off the phones, call center's the priority, which it is. It is the priority. Customers are the priority. But they really did a good job of considering the employees the customers as well. Like the way that I would teach it is that you're my customer and I'm your customer. In every decision we make, we need to consider not only our internal customers, but our external customers. And I've taken that in every place that I've taught since, right? We're not just coworkers, you're actually my customer. So, what is the best decision I can make for you to have the best experience today, right? So, what they did is they actually invested the money to make sure that we had more people on the phones so that more people had a chance to attend events. And
Hmm.
I haven't seen that since. I hope it happens, but I haven't seen it.
But Megan, now I'm thinking loud, but I think that even financially, it's not a loss because if you lose one customer, it will cost you more than the number of calls that you can have with people
Oh,
instead of
yeah.
just retaining a couple. If you are really focused, if the guy, the call center guy is really full attention with all his decision making power in front of him, he will succeed to keep that retain this customer. He will succeed that he's happy. He will succeed to engage with another purchase. There is, I mean, I'm pretty sure that the CFO did that calculation. It cannot be that it was just by chance. It's not
No,
because he loved people. No, it is also makes commercial sense.
it really does. Because what's that? And I've never found like the data behind this, but I know that I've Googled it many times and I've talked about it in class. But on average, it takes 12 good experiences to make up for a single bad experience. And that bad experience, so I always ask classes, has anyone ever had a bad customer service experience? Of course, everyone has, sadly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, did you keep it to yourself or did you tell your friends and family about it? You probably told your friends and family. And that kind of word of mouth is worth its weight in gold, good and bad, because you're getting it from somebody you trust, right? If my sister said to me, I went to this place, they were super rude, they were mean to my kids, or, whatever it may be, they were really slow, I'm not going to go to that place. I trust my sister. I know that I like, if she doesn't like it, I know I'm not going to like it, right? So, but same if she's like, "Oh my gosh, this place was amazing. The food was great. The kids actually ate everything, like they had good drinks or whatever it may be," then I'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to try this place because I trust my sister."
Hmm.
Right? So, that kind of word of mouth, to your point, that kind of word of mouth, it doesn't just stay. If it's People are less likely to share good experiences, but they're hot to share bad experiences, right? You see it in reviews all over the place, Yelp and Amazon. If it's bad, they're going to tell everybody they know.
But that's where, coming back to the point about training. So, training alone, even if they know how to speak with people, how to nudge people to do something in the call center, if they don't are not empowered to take certain decisions, like this is mini budget that I heard about from Zappos, then nothing is possible to be done because the guy who isn't satisfied, you cannot convert him, flip him around.
That's
So
right.
you need to have something, a tool. And it's not only your mouth, it's the possibility to find a solution so that this guy who wasn't happy becomes happy again.
That's right. Empowerment is a really big part of it. And I think there's kind of when we're talking about making people happy and we're customers, that kind of thing, there's like three big pillars to employee engagement, right? So like I'm on the engage team and the engage team at different corporations where you cater in food and you create, have bingo and that kind of stuff. So I always like to explain there's a difference between the engaged team, which is where that team usually ends up creating opportunities for team building, making opportunities for people to connect and have fun at work. Yes, 100%. That's great. Full support, 10 out of 10. Employee engagement is different. That's not
Mm,
team building, right? That's building a system where employees are more likely to give discretionary effort. They're going to go above and beyond if they're highly engaged, right? What are the three pillars to that? Well, it's autonomy, giving them empowerment over their own responsibilities, right? Giving them the opportunity to master their skills. That's where us in talent development come in, right? And then making sure they understand how their work impacts the organization.
mm.
So make sure they know they're important. Make sure you give them a chance to prove that they can do it on their own, right? And then give them the opportunity to improve those skills. And that's going to be different for every organization. But if we want employees that are high performers and high trust and highly engaged, then we have to kind of let go of the reins a little bit sometimes.
Mm. For the people interested about the topic that you just mentioned, so one of my favorite psychologists because it comes from science. It doesn't come that from something that we believe in the air. There is a
Right,
guy
right.
called Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi who talk about what is flow, and flow consists of meaning, the possibility to choose how to do the job, and the one empowerment where you can take decisions on your own. So, and this is some of the basics of human beings who are empowered to go and do the job with joy.
And then they're happy because they get to make their own decisions. I always share that whenever I'm coaching a leader and they're like, "Oh, I don't know if they can do it, and my name's on it." And it's like, "Well, they're never gonna learn." Like sometimes I'll ask, "Do you want them to like think about the best leader you ever had?" Right? What did they do or not do that made them so great? What made them come up for you? And then they'll say, oh, they, delegated. They gave me an opportunity, right? Or whatever it may be. They listened to me. They didn't judge me, that type of stuff. You say, okay, well, what's the worst leader you've ever had? And everybody's got one, right? Maybe more than one. And you say, well, name a behavior that they did or didn't do that made them the worst. And say, okay, so which one like you're creating a memory for your employees. So how do you want them to be able to describe you? That's what we need to think about. It's not just about what we're saying today, what we're doing today. How do you want people to describe you? Do you want them to have story worthy, amazing, inspirational story? Ivan was the best trainer I ever had, right? Or leader or whatever. Or do you want to be like, Ivan micromanaged me to death. I don't ever want to work with Ivan again, right? Because every decision they make, every action builds trust or damages trust, right? And every single one is creating a memory. So, what kind of memory do you want to create? And we're not perfect. We're not always going to create good memories. But if we can keep that in mind, sometimes that can help us make those good decisions when we're under stress.
And it takes, I mean, I'm thinking back about the title of your book, Manage to Fail. It takes practice and failure
Yes.
because there will be like opportunities where you want to do that, exactly that. You will think about that guy who inspired you to be the person that you are today. But suddenly you are in an environment that is shitty with stress. And when you are stressed, your brain is not functioning correctly and
No.
you act like any, so
Yeah.
you will be micromanaging. For instance, that has happened to me, by the way,
Yes.
under stress. I have been micromanaging and I felt shitty when I was coming back home, by the
Yes.
way.
Same. No, same. A lot of the stories in there are things that I've done. Some of it I've witnessed, some of it I've done. And you're like, "Just please don't do it. Please don't do it. It's not worth it. It doesn't feel good. It's not a good feeling." You got to go back and apologize later, and then you're like, oh man, how am I going to rebuild trust with these people? And it's difficult. It's a difficult thing. Management is no joke.
No, and it requires to practice, fail a little bit, and iterate continuously.
That's right.
So, what would it be like if you had to give like some quick tips to this leader in a large corporation who is wants to build a team culture where failure is genuinely treated as data, not as a career risk? What he could either, well, first stop doing so that he can make it happen. Because I think stop doing is the key word here.
I think letting your stress win, right? So stop emotionally reacting
Mm.
because many times it can be fixed. Many times it can be fixed. I say this in the training community a lot. In all the years I've been training, I've had one training emergency. One. And it was hardly ever is it going to be, we're not building rockets. Now, if you work at NASA, okay, if you need to micromanage a little bit to get them to the moon, whatever that takes, right? But most of us are not doing that kind of work, right? So it's like, and it's still important, but lives are probably not at risk here, right? So as best as you can, try to stop emotionally reacting and get curious. Don't worry about how it's going to make you look to your bosses. Worry about how you can react in a way that is going to build trust with your team. So it's a way to reframe, oh my gosh, she really messed this up. Megan messed this up. She already sent that email out. It had like 4 or 5 typos in it because she types too fast and everyone's going to see it. What are they going to think about me? No, 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 no. Instead, get curious about what's happening so that Megan is typing so fast. Why does she feel like she needed to get this out quickly? Why are there so many typos? Does she have there's 1 million things that you can add to your desktop that will like proofread this for you, right? Did she send it to me and I didn't review it? So I think changing some of these things where it's like another way to think about it, I guess, is when crops fail, do we blame the crops or do we blame the farmer? Right? We need to start looking at managers and start considering that for ourselves when it's like when our team is not performing well, instead of looking at the team, where did they fail? Look at, did I provide them with everything they needed to grow? And sometimes the rain isn't going to fall, sometimes the environment is bad, but did I do everything I could do to support them and build them up and help them grow? And that's where we should be starting, not with you made a mistake, but hey, why did this mistake happen? What could I have done to support you better? Am I showing up to meetings? Am I delegating? Am I giving you time to practice? Am I giving you those stretch assignments where you can grow into this role? Or am I saying it needs to be perfect and send it out immediately? What is happening? Like, what's
Mm.
this can we can grow from this instead of make it something where it's like, well, now it looks bad on me. It's not about you. It's about the team.
Do you have like top favorite stories of companies who have succeeded to embed this culture of it is okay to fail? You can go beyond the Zappos stories. Enough with Zappos. We have mentioned it enough. So, do you have any other stories of
I
successful
do, but
companies
one of
who's
my favorite ones is from Zappos.
okay? You have the right to one.
One story from Zappos. So this was a long time ago, before AI was integrated and all that other stuff. So this is, gosh, let's say 2010. I don't think that's the right year, but it was a long time ago. At Zappos back then was there's Zappos and there was 6 p.m., which is like a sister site. You know, they owned it and it was a discount site. And it had a lot of inventory that was inherited from Zappos and it had their own inventory as well. Things that we wanted to like mark out, you know, kind of get off the site. The merchandisers back then, and this was a bad idea from the start, but the merchandisers were responsible for going into the back end system and like doing coding to change the prices. So we have this woman, end of the day, went in to change the code to put items on sale that were inherited from Zappos, just those specific items. She ended up putting like 2 backspaces instead of 1 backspace or slash or whatever it was. Went live overnight. And instead of just putting the Zappos stuff on sale, it put everything on the site and marked it down like stupid amount. So there's like really $300 boots, $50, $400 cut like North Face jackets, $50. And what happens in that e-tail kind of community is that when one person finds out, like those people who are always scrolling for the deals, trolling for the sales, they'll tell everybody else. So they were breaking records all night and everyone was asleep. So they wake up and they're like getting that whole 6 p.m. team is getting email after email of like, you're breaking records, you're breaking records. And they're like, we're not having any sales. Why are we breaking records? That does no, like no. So they go on, they discover the mistake. Millions of dollars have been purchased and lost at this point because those were not supposed to be on sale. They actually had to shut down the web, like shut it down. They had to close the website. Nobody could have access to it. They had to fix it. Marketing, because everyone knew about it. How do we solve this? That woman didn't know if she was going to have a job. She like didn't come into work the next day. She was like, "Oh, I mean, what a mistake. What a mistake to make." So she comes in the next day, they fix it. Tony decides to put something on the website. He has a statement. He's like, "Even though it's in our terms that we don't have to honor this, we're actually going to honor it. We're going to honor it. Everybody can keep everything. No, we're going to keep the person. Yes, it wasn't an intern, but no, 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 no." Our CFO at the time, Alfred Lynn was his name. They sat right next to the merchandising team. She came into work and she didn't, she was so nervous and she's like, I'm probably going to get fired today. And he pulled her aside and he said, "Hey, I want to let you know that we have now invested millions of dollars in your education. So you're actually too valuable of an employee to let go." Can you imagine? I mean, and
Oh, la
now,
la.
and then now they all kind of laughed about it and that kind of stuff. But it also identified our merchandisers should not be doing this work, right? They're already doing work. We need to hire the software engineers that can get this done so that they don't have to worry about it. Because again, if we go back to their job description, this was not in their scope. It's not work that she should have been doing in the first place. So it was a couple of different things there.
That's a nice story. I love it. And it makes sense. This person is going to be remembering that. She's going to be grateful, loyal. When you are allowed to do mistakes, you become loyal, like attached to that person who allow you to do something and learn. Megan, what is the best way to reach you out? So imagine that people are want they have this intention, like many organizations, to be able to learn how to fail and be more innovative because failure, if you are too cautious about failure, definitely you are not going to drive any innovation because you are afraid that it's going to fail.
Yes, absolutely.
How can they reach you out? What is the best way other than reading your book? Because that could be a good start, but it is not enough. Sometimes it's good to have this chit chat like you and me today.
That's right. So I have a website, managetofail.com. You can email me, Megan at managetofail.com. You can follow me on Instagram, and this is going to sound wild. So manage to fail is kind of how we ended up damaging trust. My Instagram is manage to trust with Megan, which is how we can actually build it back up, a lot of different steps. So I'm on LinkedIn. You have my email. So please, please reach out if you have any questions, comments, concerns. Angry letters. I always like to throw that in there too. But I'm a resource, I'm a tool. So please, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Definitely, I'm going to write all these links that we just mentioned below this episode. Megan, it was lovely to spend time with you
Same.
and finally have some answers about all this mystery behind Zappos. So many
The
times that I
enigma.
have been mentioning and without really knowing, is it true? Maybe it's just publicity.
It's mostly true, and there's a lot of other wild stories, but I won't say those when we're being recorded.
Thank you, Megan. Have an excellent day.
You too. Thank you so much. Be good.